And welcome back to the Cooler Jets podcast. We're Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Well, Michael, we're sitting here Monday afternoon after the Jets lost to the Bucs in preseason. We've had a few days now to watch the game and look at the All-22. So we have our thoughts from this game. We'll update our 53-man roster. But first, Michael, how are you doing? And what did you make of the midfield logo? I think that was my biggest takeaway from this game.
100%. I mean, there was football being played apparently, but my attention was completely fixated on the updated oval shape in the middle of the field. So that was a huge game changer. I think it's going to completely alter the Jets' fortunes going forward. So by far, that's the biggest takeaway.
I gotta be okay. I know we're like half joking. It's a major upgrade. I know it's a really small change.
It is.
Maybe I'm nuts, and maybe we'll just become used to it. But that NFL shield in the middle just added to the sense of neutrality of MetLife Stadium with the gray seats and the AC unit appearance. The giant Jets logo. It's not the prettiest logo in football, but it did add a lot of character to the field. I will say the one thing that bothers me about this new turf paint job is the color on the, this is going to sound very OCD, but I'm sorry. The color on the end zones doesn't fill the entire end zone. They leave like a foot of regular grass in between. Did you notice that, or am I crazy?
I didn't notice it at first, but you pointed it out to me, and I don't like it either. I other teams though, you notice it more. I think it's okay with the Jets because it's green, so you kind of don't really notice it. Like the Giants, a little more noticeable. So
that's true.
It's a negative, but the Jets can work around it, I think.
Okay, last thing of the non-important topics. Can we improve the stadium banner too? I was hopeful that they were going to change the wrap that goes around the field. I know we normally save this for the end of the podcast, but whatever. New logo in the middle. We can talk. We can open it up. When are we going to change that? Feels like
I agree. I'm with you. I actually think I was more critical of this than you are because I want to get back to, you remember when they had the skyline kind of design on the banner? I forget when it was like early 2010s.
That was like the Geno Smith era.
Yeah, like Geno Smith era. That looked really cool. I like that. But now it's just plain black or green, and it's got those contrail stripes. Like, it's very plain. It's inoffensive, but it doesn't inspire me.
Giants did a nice job with their new one. All right, we'll be done. Well, let's move on to the actual game. We apologize. I just had to get all that out. Midfield logo looks great though. Added something to the stadium. Turf looks all right. MetLife Turf though may have gotten Joe Tippmann. We're still waiting to hear an update on that. The beat writers are busy doing their rankings of DC EU movies and I don't know whatever else, tweeting out selfies. So we're waiting for an update on Joe Tippmann. We did go back and watch the game and some of the plays because he does miss a drive in the middle of the game. And so we went back and watched. It looked like his knee kind of buckled on there, but then he came back and played for another 2 quarters. And then the last play before he was out for the rest of the game, but he just went out with the rest of the second string offensive line, kind of bangs his left knee again. So hoping that that's pretty minor.
We should clarify that both of those things though didn't look as severe as it might sound. Just based on those.
Yeah, I may have just hyped that up. Sorry.
Yeah, the first one, I mean, maybe he slipped a little bit. It was in the middle of a protection rep. Maybe a little tweak, and then it was after that he missed when Knight fumbled. So that was a 1-play drive. He missed that. He came back after, and he played, I think, another 2 or 3 drives after that and looked okay. And on the last play, maybe there was some knee contact in there, but he seemed fine after that. And it was the last play of that drive anyway. And then they subbed the next drive. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Maybe by the time you hear this, you already know, but we're hoping for the best.
It's the only thing, not the only thing, but the most important thing out of preseason. You just don't want to see those injuries. It does seem like they avoided a major scare with Abanikanda because for a second there when he wasn't able to put any weight on that knee, it was like, all right, well, his rookie season's over. But it sounds like he just has a thigh bruise. We'll see how long that keeps him out. And then, the Jets
on that subject, though, quickly, what do you think of Rodgers playing against the
Giants? I was getting to it. It's the last week of training camp, and they're going to play Rodgers in this preseason game. It sounds like we should get Dwayne Brown back this week. There's another man on the offensive line we're going to spend a good chunk of talking about today, but it sounds like the Jets should have their full week 1 starting offensive line back this week. Hopefully, we'll see updates on Lakin and AVT. But if the Jets get a full week of practice with Brown at left tackle, Lakin at left guard, Connor McGovern at center, Elijah Vera Tucker at right guard, and then Mekhi Becton at right tackle. We'll hop into that in a second. If they get a full week of that, and then they want to run it in the game to shake off the rust, I don't hate it. It's a little scary, especially, it's the Giants backups, which should bode well for us actually. But, anytime you have guys fighting for their job out there, it can be kind of intense. But I would hope that the Jets starting line can keep Aaron Rodgers up against the Giants' backup defensive line. They don't have the same depth that the Jets do, but they do like to blitz. I don't hate it. Rodgers hasn't played in the preseason the last few years, and if you notice, he's gotten off to some slow starts in Green Bay before really getting going, like week 3, week 4. So if he wants to play a couple series, and also, that game against the Bills is going to be very, it's a big division game, open up the season, primetime football, anniversary of 9/11. There's a lot of emotion in that game. His first game in New York, the crowd, so anything that can maybe kind of help minimize that moment for him, just get on the field already, lead a touchdown drive for the Jets, just get used to it a little bit. Not that, he's played 18 years in the league and it's a preseason game, but just to kind of maybe just shake off a little bit of that rust before that huge moment week 1. I don't hate it. I have a feeling, just looking at your face, you don't like it?
I mean, I don't hate it, but I don't like it. I think the risk is far greater. I know, like we talk about this every week. I have a permanent home right there on the fence. It's not comfortable, though. I mean, just imagine sitting on a fence. Not comfortable. But anyway, don't love it, but I also don't like it. So, or I would say I don't hate it, but I don't like it.
Jesus, just say what you want to say.
I mean, you kind of interrupted me with your first comment.
Sorry. All right, fine. My bad.
Look, I think the potential reward, which you just laid out, like I totally understand that, but the risk is just way too much greater than that potential reward for me to think it's worth it. So I personally would not risk it in the slightest, not a single snap. Just count your blessings that you've gotten this far through all these training camp practices and everyone's in one piece. Just keep him out, freeze him in carbonite, get him ready for week 1. That's what I would do. But I do understand the benefits you just laid out. I think that is legitimate. And obviously the fact that Rodgers is playing, that means that he views those things as legitimate because clearly it's his decision and they wouldn't force him out there. So I do understand it. And I think there are benefits to it, specifically the ones you laid out. I mean, that does make a lot of sense because exactly how you laid it out, when he gets out into that situation in week 1, there's going to be so many emotions in that. So to get some real game action in before that, I think could be good to help him get his feet wet before the season starts, especially considering some of the slow starts they've had in Green Bay in recent years, which have coincided with him never playing in the preseason. So I do understand the upside, but at the same time, for me, I personally would just avoid the risk entirely. I don't think it's worth the reward, but I do get it.
The last 2 biggest factors, though, which we didn't touch on, he's only had 2 joint practices because the second one with Carolina got canceled due to the weather, and then the Jets canceled the second one against the Panthers, which caused a whole stir last week. But that's in the past. We'll move on it. So he only had 2 joint practices, and in the first one against the Panthers, he didn't even have Garrett Wilson. So that coupled with, and even you talked about at the beginning of the offseason, he might play in preseason depending on how those joint practices go. So the fact that he only got half of them, I think, it was seeming more and more likely that he wants to play in the preseason. It's not the Jets forcing him. He wants to go out there and play for a number of reasons. I think one, to help us, shake off that rust, to help keep establishing chemistry with some of the other weapons. And also I think it can help for, it's a new offense for most of the guys on this offense. Obviously there's some holdovers, but it can help for those guys to be on the field with Rodgers running this offense, hearing him in the huddle in a game settings. You can get that in practice, and it's preseason, so it's only half of it, but I do think it does matter a little bit. But I think the main thing, too, is if you're going to have that starting offensive line out there, building that chemistry with Rodgers, setting the protections, blocking for him in a game, working as a unit, because that's really a thing that we haven't talked about a lot is this starting O-line is, I guess we have talked about it, but starting O-line has gotten no time together. And O-line is one of those positions, like, yes, it's 5 unique individual positions, but they're really one unit, and they haven't gotten any time. We're entering the last week of training camp to work together. So I do think that if everybody's healthy, getting this week of practice and then getting some game action could be really beneficial before, just piecemealing it all throughout training camp and then throwing them out there week 1. I do see the benefits in it. Obviously, there's the risk of injury, but there's that risk every week. Yes, you want to save it for when the games matter, but I'll argue that there are benefits. There are significant benefits to playing him this week, even if it's just for a drive or 2. So I'm not going to hate it if it, if it happens. It sounds like it will. I will say if he does get injured, I'll totally change tune on this. But my last question to you on this before we talk a little bit about the Bucs game, if Rodgers is playing, that means Garrett Wilson's playing. That means Quentin Williams playing. Sauce Gardner. I mean, are you going all the starters, or are you just saying Like, where do you draw the line?
It sounds like it. If Aaron Rodgers is out there, it's all hands on deck, right? Unless someone's dealing with a nagging injury, then probably, right?
I'm gonna double back on pretty much everything I just said. I think I would probably play Garrett, and I'd play all the offensive starters outside of Brees and Dalvin Cook, I guess, because they're coming back from injuries. The defensive guys, it's the same system. The solid system is fairly simple. It's all about an emphasis on playing fast. Those guys have all played. I don't think there's any benefit to Quinnen Williams, for example, playing in this game, or Sauce Gardner. Maybe with the corners, maybe, but I'll stake my claim in the ground. I just want to see the offensive starters. Defense, they can keep it the backups, but it does sound like
I agree. I'm just trying to predict what they're going to do. I'm totally in the camp of just avoid injuries. I don't care about the preseason experience. I lean heavily into that, but in terms of what they will do you think they'll play all those guys?
I just don't. Is there any benefit to putting Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed out there to cover the Giants' backup receivers?
Like, no, I don't think so, but doesn't mean they won't play them.
Outside of just getting the game experience. It's not like
they're say the same thing about Rodgers against the Giants' backup defense.
They've been facing much harder competition every single day in practice against Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, and so I don't really see any benefit for those guys. The offensive stuff, we laid out the reasons. That makes sense. Defense, to me, I think I'd stick with the backups, and maybe you could play like Quincy Williams, maybe you could play Tony Adams, Jordan White, but like the superstars on defense, Quinnen, Sauce, DJ Reed. I mean, Carl doesn't sound like he'd play. JFM, I'd just keep them on the sideline. All right. Anything else on this Giants week before we look back on this Bucs game? I do like that we had a few days to look at the all 22 on this one, because we do have a lot more thoughts. It's hard when you're just watching the broadcast angle to get a full appreciation of what's going on in the field. But one of the things that was very obvious from just watching it live was Mekhi Becton's dominance at right tackle. It was a real prove-it game for him. It was his first opportunity to get right tackle reps and try to earn that job. He'd only had 1 day of practice at right tackle. Yeah, he had last training camp, but it's been a long road back for him to even just get healthy, to get in shape, to build confidence in that knee. Samini came out with that article on Sunday that was talking about how they had a plan for Becton to step 1, get in shape, step 2, build confidence in that knee at left tackle where it's easier. And then step 3, you'll have a chance to compete. It seems like he's passed the first 2 tests with flying colors. And then Saturday was a big prove-it game. How, can he play right tackle? How does he look at right tackle? Can he make it through the game? How much they want him to get through. And you tweeted out, it was 2 less snaps than Carolina, but it was actually a significantly higher. It was like 40% of the offensive snaps compared
47.
to 47. He damn near played half the game, which is all they were really looking for. So he passed the test with flying colors, because it wasn't just like he played, but he dominated out there. Passing, running game, he looked awesome. Michael, I'll go to you first, though. What did you make of Mekhi Becton's debut at right tackle?
Yeah, I think it's one of those rare offensive line performances that stands out on a broadcast. And granted, we are all paying attention to him specifically, but you could see watching it live that he was comfortable and that he was dominant against the Buccaneers backups, which is exactly what we wanted to see. And we're starting to trend towards having that starting offensive line that we wanted all along, with Brown at left tackle and Becton at right tackle, and you get to keep AVT right where he's comfortable at right guard. But yeah, I like the performance in pretty much all aspects. I mean, run game, tons of movement. We saw it going laterally down the line of scrimmage and climbing to the second level on combo blocks too. Just tons of movement that you just don't see from other offensive linemen. And you compare it to the other guys on the field, there might be other Jets linemen who are making good blocks and doing their jobs, but Becton will still fly past them, just creating movement that blows them completely out of the water. There aren't a lot of guys in the league who can do what he can do at his best. And then in pass protection too, he was maybe even sharper than he was in the run game, because it was pretty much flawless. Only on the Zach Wilson scramble, his guy got off him at the end, but at that point he'd already held up for like almost 3 whole seconds. And Zach had also stepped up anyway, so he kind of went into the pressure because he was dodging another rusher. So I consider that one a win for Becton. So both phases, I thought he was great. And it's very encouraging, because this is the first time he's played any real game snaps at right tackle in the league. We know he played it at Louisville quite a bit over his first 2 years, but he didn't play it in his junior year there. It was only his first 2 years. So he hasn't played it since 2018 in a game.
Training camp last year.
Training camp, but in a real game.
For 2 weeks.
So it's been a while since he's actually suited up and played it out there, and he looked very comfortable right away. But I think it's worth talking about that report from Samini that you brought up, because, I mean, I'm interested as to why we didn't hear about that already, because it feels like it could have explained everything that was happening, because it does perfectly match up with the way things have gone for him to this point. Starting at left tackle, slowly ramping up, because the doctors thought it was better for him to start on that side because it puts less stress on the injured right knee, which at right tackle, you're putting more pressure on that as you get into your sets. So that makes sense. So they started him there, ramped him up, and now right tackle. And now they liked the way that he's progressed throughout the preseason, gradually playing more snaps, playing well while he's out there. And now it seems like he's right on track to be starting at right tackle, and that this is basically what they wanted the entire time. So it was a reassuring report to read, but I'm a little curious as to why we didn't hear it. But regardless, here we are, and it feels like we're in a good spot with him.
We didn't hear it because we didn't need to hear it, honestly. If Becton and Jets had that plan, and also, if it was out in the public and, people are really focusing in on that, so-called plan, we didn't really need to hear about it.
I don't feel like the team needed to tell us. I just feel like it's the type of thing that would have gotten out earlier.
I guess that's true. The beat reporters are busy ranking DCEU movies, so
right.
We haven't heard from him. But yeah, he was absolutely dominant. He's definitely the best tackle on this team. It's really never been a question of talent. It's, the last 2 years it's been, can this guy stay in shape and can he stay healthy? He's been in shape. He showed up to camp last year in shape too. People kind of forget that, but he showed up to camp and OTAs this spring in phenomenal shape. And then it's been about building trust in that knee. He's done that. And like you said, he's a difference maker. He's not just okay, fine, the Jets have a solid right tackle. He can be an elite Pro Bowl tackle. There's no reason he can't be. It's just, can he stay healthy? And so, I remember seeing Becton as a rookie dominate at left tackle and just thinking about, man, this guy, if they can just build any sort of team, this guy can be a real difference maker. He can be our Trent Williams, opening up holes in the run game, being Sam Darnold's blindside protector for a decade. Some of those things didn't happen, but putting him on right tackle, sitting him next to AVT as well, I think that's going to be awesome. Just those two guys next to each other in the run game with Breece and Dalvin Cook back there. I mean, the Jets have a legitimate, they can beat you in many different ways, and the offensive line has been under a lot of scrutiny, but we've always said this for the last few months. Yeah, the floor in this offensive line could be pretty low. It could sink the season. It could lead to an Aaron Rodgers injury, but the ceiling on this offensive line, if AVT's healthy, if Becton's healthy, if Lakin plays more like he's played the last few years and not like last season, this could be a really high ceiling offensive line, especially in the run game. So really excited to see how Becton played on Saturday. And now it's just about this week. Can we get the starting five out there on the practice field? I know Dwayne Brown has to pass some tests today, hoping he's activated off the PUP list. And then, yeah, that Giants game will show a lot. It's just about building that chemistry. They're going to have to do it on an expedited timeline because they only got, what is this? I mean, 2 weeks now, 3 weeks from week one?
3 weeks from today.
Yeah, 3 weeks. 3 weeks from week one. So they got 3 weeks to build that chemistry. And that is assuming that Lakin and AVT are fully healthy, which we don't know. And again, we'll hear on Tippmann. I guess last thing on the offensive line, we were kind of going back and forth on our preferred offensive lines. Clearly, Tippmann is very talented and will have a place in this offensive line in the future. I think he'll be starting at some point this season. There's a question of whether or not that'll be at center at guard, because I would say that the biggest thing that he's struggled with so far has been the actual snapping, but his blocking as a center or guard has been great. I can see Rodgers wanting the veteran center. So whether it be by injury or maybe if Lakin's not holding his end of the bargain, or if Becton or Brown goes down and we have to move AVT out to tackle, I do think Tippmann will get out there. You were floating around. Maybe you want to get him out there week one. Have you changed your tune on that at all after seeing Becton dominate?
I think I've changed my tune on it a little bit because of not only that, but the way Tippmann played at guard. I didn't think he looked great in that appearance at guard. I don't know if you agree, but I felt like there was he was not as consistent as he looked at center. In terms of blocking at center, he still has to work on the snaps for sure. Even the Zach Wilson scramble, he had to catch that snap one-handed. So has to work on the snapping at center, but his overall play at center has been great. But at guard in this game, I did think he was pretty shaky. It wasn't always visible because they're getting the ball out pretty quick, but I thought he was getting beat pretty quickly in pass protection specifically. So I didn't love the way he played there, but just the fact that they're considering it, I mean, does show that they're confident that he has potential to maybe play there at some point. So yeah, I floated before we knew Becton was in consideration at right tackle. Early last week, I was floating around the idea of, and I'm not sure if we talked about it on here or not, but I floated around Becton at left tackle, put Tippmann at right guard, and AVT at right tackle, with the idea being that those are probably your 5 most talented players, depending on what you think of Dwayne Brown, because for me, I'm just a little concerned of him at this age, what he's going to be. And I like Tippmann so much that I'd like to get him out there. And also projecting that he could play well at guard just because he's blocked so well at center, hasn't snapped it well. But in the game, I didn't think he looked great at guard when he was there. So maybe he's not as ready for it as I thought. And then Becton at right tackle, looking as great as he did, makes me think, let's just go with that lineup that we all initially wanted. So looks like they're trending towards that. Well, hopefully Tomlinson and AVT are going to be ready this week so they could get some reps in together as a group. But I'm cool with going with that initial starting 5 we all hoped for.
Yeah, Brown is really the. I mean, maybe he's not the main wild card considering we got AVT coming off of injury, Becton playing a new position. Lakin struggled last year, and McGovern's been average, above average, below average at times last season. But Brown to me really stands out because we were arguing, maybe not arguing, but texting back and forth last week about him. And I went back and watched some of his tape from last year. And I do have to say what he did on a torn rotator cuff is legitimately impressive at his age. But I see what you're saying. You do worry about another year getting closer to 40 when he faces those speedier edge rushers. It's been well documented. The Jets' first 6 weeks of the season, they're going up against some of the better defensive lines in all of football. You're worried about his ability to protect Aaron Rodgers' backside. I will say, in pass protection last year, I did feel like he was pretty solid. You could see, he's a slower old man out there, but he's a brick wall when he does get his hands on you. Doesn't have the same push in the run game that he had earlier in his career, but he's at least competent. He's not falling over himself like Max Mitchell at times. Although I do want to say Mitchell, I think Mitchell gets almost a little too much hate at times because he got a little overrated by fans. I went back and watched at least this last game. Yeah, he had a few misses in the run game, but I'm going off topic here. I don't know how you feel about Mitchell's performance, but I felt like, okay, he had a few whiffs, but he's been pretty solid in pass protection, I felt. And then you did have some okay plays in the run game. No?
I don't know. I think I'm lower on Mitchell than you. I think the run blocking has been, I agree in pass protection. Maybe he's more decent than some people are letting on, but I do think his run blocking has been pretty bad. I see too many whiffs for me. But
then he has some good plays too. It's not.
He does, but I mean, everyone does. He does too many whiffs for me. I
guess that's fair
compared to other players. When you really watch a player every single snap, and because we've been doing this preseason with a lot of different linemen, you start to get a feel for okay, how often should I see something good? How often should I see something bad? And for him, the run game mistakes where he gets completely tossed aside with ease and blows up a play. There was 4 or 5 in the Browns game, and he barely played. Probably 2 or 3 in the Panthers game, and then I would say another 2 or 3 in this game. So it's just way too frequent.
I guess that's fair. I guess the point I was going to make with him and Brown, though, is more so with Brown, is you are fairly confident in his ability to protect Rodgers. It's just, at the risk of your run game. But hey, if Becton's healthy on the right side with AVT, just run right every play. But you feeling a lot better about the starting goal line after seeing Becton? We'll move on, but I just want to close out.
I do have some stuff to say about Brown. I actually did a Brown article today.
All right, there we go.
I mean, he's a very interesting guy to discuss because, think about it. First 3 games, potentially Von Miller in week 1. We'll see. Micah Parsons in week 2. And then Matt Judon in week 3. Dwayne Brown's your left tackle, and he's barely gotten any reps with Rodgers with this offense. He's just coming off the surgery. He's 38. So there's some questions there for sure. But I do think there is some upside to be excited about because you look at last season, he plays through the shoulder injury the whole year, and his pass protection was still, in terms of how many pressures he allowed, the rate of pressures, and just watching him, I think just pretty average as a pass blocker for a starting left tackle. I'd say middle of the road, top 15. And considering all that, that's pretty impressive. And with Zach Wilson back there, who makes his linemen's jobs harder because he holds the ball too long and doesn't know how to set the protections. So pass protection outlook, I think, is pretty good for him going into this year. So that's very encouraging. The run game is the question, because I would say he was bad last year, close to the bottom among left tackles. But it makes sense when you have a torn labrum that it's the run game where you would get affected, because in pass protection, you're more in a guarding position. It's more about the footwork and the technique, mirroring guys, and just being able to take on the force. You don't really have to give it out as much as you do in the run game, where it's about creating movement. And if you have a torn labrum, it's hard to do that. So I do think he was bad as a run blocker last year, like really bad, I would say. But considering the injury, there is hope that going into this year, he's had the surgery, he's fresher, that won't affect him anymore. Maybe he could be average as a run blocker. And if he can do that and give you average in both phases, I think the Jets would be thrilled with that. And that would do so much for the floor of this O-line. If you're left tackle in Dwayne Brown, who has probably the least upside of the 5 guys on the offensive line, if he's average, then that's going to go a long way for how good this unit can be. So I think I'm concerned. He's 38, so even if he's healthy, he could still get hurt again. He could fall off this year just because he is so old. You never know when that fall off year is going to come. And, the run blocking, he struggled last year. So despite being healthier, still want to see it before you assume it's going to happen. So I have concerns, but there are very legitimate reasons to be optimistic about him as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that is just the number one spot that you just want some level of I don't know what the comfort, familiarity with Rodgers, just confidence. I guess that's what I'm looking for. Confidence that they can keep Rodgers upright. They don't need to be the
worst position to have a bad player.
Exactly. And so with, even going to Mitchell, who not a veteran, less confident about his ability to handle Micah Parsons week 2, but at least from what we've seen in preseason and last year, he's better in the pass protection versus run game. I'll take that at left tackle. For Dwayne Brown, a veteran who's been in the league as long as Rodgers, I think there's a level of confidence and familiarity that Rodgers can have with a guy like Brown protecting his backside. But yeah, I mean, like you said, we've been saying it for the last few months. The ceiling of this offensive line is very high. They probably won't fully meet that. Injuries will definitely happen, but and especially at times in this training camp, a lot of injuries have hit, and so the floors look lower and lower. But I do think this offensive line will be better than it was last year. And then with Rodgers, I know I said it a few weeks ago, and then you disputed it, where I was like, well, Rodgers gets the ball out of his hands pretty quickly. And you're like, well, that's not necessarily fully true, but he is a veteran quarterback, and he has a much better sense of the timing of the rush. And, when he has to get the ball out of his hands quickly, he will get the ball out of his hands quickly. That's another thing I want to see in the Giants game. Please, we don't need the long developing pass plays and deep play actions. We can just a lot of quick passes, what we've seen so far from Hackett's offense, just, the screens, throws the flats, slants, just shaking off the rust, but maybe don't test the O-line too much.
I agree. You can get value out of that. Just getting used to hearing his cadence, setting protections, making audibles, switching run to pass, doing all that. You don't have to call, deep shots that take 3 seconds to develop to get value out of this preseason game. So hopefully if they can do that, just keep him clean. That's all.
Yeah. All right. A few other things from this game. Michael Carter getting the rest. Zonovan Knight getting the start.
Yeah.
Makes it seem like Carter's spot is safe. I didn't know how to necessarily take that, but I guess it, when we had Sabo on a few weeks ago, he was saying, Bam Knight's actually been their best running back in camp. It kind of seemed like, maybe Carter was in jeopardy if they did go and bring in Dalvin Cook. Carter, out of the two of them, between Bam and Carter, it seems like he was the one that they could maybe try to move for a late day 3 pick. So that was the other thing. I was like, okay, if they have too many running backs, he's the only one that I think they could maybe trade. I don't think everybody's trading for Bam Knight, but seems like Carter's done a nice job of having a nice bounce back offseason. Looks to be in better shape. Last week against the Panthers, he looked really good. He's a good, locker room guy. You see him in all those videos. He seems like a fun guy to be around. But they gave Bam the start, and part of it I think was to maybe impress teams. Maybe somebody would make a move for him, but it was the exact opposite. He really played poorly enough where I think that he could find his way onto the practice squad. So, we'll see. But if they do end up cutting Bam Knight, it might be a win-win for the Jets, because I don't want to say he was so bad in that game, but he had enough negative plays in that one where the Jets might be able to cut him, sneak him onto the practice squad, and have the 4 running backs of Hall, Cook, Carter, and Abanikanda. Now we'll see. There are some teams that could use some running backs. He has some good film out there as well. But the fumble, the drop pass, he did have one good block. I noticed on a deep pass to Evan Charles. He made a play. So actually, never mind. That was Abanikanda. So
he did have one good block. But
okay,
yeah,
well we
gotta talk about my guy Knight. He's not doing a whole lot.
Yeah, I know.
Justify my confidence in him, and I'm willing to admit that. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh well,
there's still hope.
Well, but nah, he's really disappointing in this game. I mean, the Panthers game was, Carter outshined him in that game, but it was only a quarter, so I was hoping, there's still a chance for him to get back on track, because all the way up to that point, all we heard was, as you said, Robbie told us Knight was playing the best in the preseason or in training camp. And at the Panthers practice I was at, I agreed with that based on what I saw. And Panthers game, Carter outplays him, but one quarter. So hopefully he can bounce back. He did not in this game. And like you said, Carter doesn't play, so that's already kind of a signal that, Carter's usurped him. Maybe Knight's got more to prove than he does. And I mean, this was one of the worst games a running back could have. He fumbles, he drops a pass, he tripped, I don't know if you remember that one play where I forget, I don't know what he was doing, but he goes in front of Tim Boyle while he's dropping back and he trips him and Boyle has to throw the ball away, blows up the play. There's another play where he was in protection and he ran right into the back of Tittman's legs and tripped him. So he lost his rep and allowed pressure. And then when he was running the ball, I mean, he had a couple decent runs by the end, but there were definitely some plays where he had clear one-on-one situations, a good opportunity to make someone miss, and he wasn't doing it in the way that he was doing it last year, those first few games, when it felt like he could make anyone miss. So, yeah, that was extremely underwhelming. He's not doing much to make me look good. So at this point, I'm not going to spoil my 53 prediction yet. We'll get into that later, but it's not looking too optimistic for him at this point, which is a very steep drop-off in the matter of a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I have a proposition for you. If Dalvin Cook scores a touchdown week 1, will you get his jersey?
That's not enough.
That's not enough?
I have a counter proposal.
Okay.
If at the midpoint of the season, he's averaging at least 4.5 yards per carry, I will get a jersey.
That's all right. Is it you feel
that's
good
how how I look at guys. I'm not
4.5.
I need to see that efficiency. That's what I'm about.
All right. So mid-season. So what are we talking? Bye week.
Bye week. Yeah.
All right. Bye week.
That's bye week. 4.50 minimum.
All right. Then you're gonna get that Dalvin Cook jersey. It may come from
get that jersey.
Another. Might not be American, but
might not be domestic, but it will say Cook on the back.
Any other thoughts on the start? We'll get to Zach in a second and some defense guys and talking about the 53. But the starting weapons put another game. I mean, outside of Garrett Wilson, but you got to see Conklin, Uzama, Lazard, Hardman. Any thoughts on those guys? I did notice Tyler Conklin had a really nice block to open up the game. And I know you always tell me CJ Uzama, sneaky bad run blocker. Tyler Conklin, sneaky good run blocker.
Yes. Yeah, he is. I mean, Conklin's blocking doesn't get a lot of attention because I feel like he doesn't make a lot of highlight blocks. That one you're mentioning maybe classifies, but in general, I don't feel like he has those killer pancake blocks, but he's just super consistent. He doesn't get beat a lot. So that's what I like about his blocking. Yeah, I mean, the starters got in there a little bit. Lazard, there's the one pass that Wilson missed him behind over the middle, but then the pass he hit Lazard on later, I thought was a great pass. Very precise in the middle of a few different defenders in the zone. And Lazard did a nice job of settling the soft spot. Thought he showed good spatial awareness on that, especially after the catch. He knew exactly where to go to get the most yak. So I liked what Lazard showed in those limited opportunities.
Yeah, he's such a big body, man. I mean, I'm excited to see him with Rodgers because they already have that chemistry, and for him to get some use in the goal line, or in the red zone. But yeah, on those slants, putting him in slot. I mean, I even saw them use him as a pseudo H back where they kind of motion him in line and then run right behind him. And I think they can do that with him and Corey Davis. He's a weapon. He's not going to bring you the same explosiveness or well, I'm not gonna say versatility, explosiveness or high-end receiver one talent that Garrett Wilson brings you, but his size, his run blocking, his ability to block off defenders, and even his yak. I mean, I do think, you get him in open field, he can make some guys, miss, more so with stiff arms and trucking than, jukes. But I think he's going to be a real weapon to this offense. I know Corey Davis is seems like he's passed him up a little bit on the depth chart, but I am excited for Lazard to get some run. It seems like Hardman also has a bit of his own role, trying to get him some quick passes, yards after the catch. I'm curious to see how much they give him deep shots down the field, because I feel like that's something that he didn't get to do as much in KC. Obviously, he got those opportunities with Mahomes, but I do really think that he can be a field stretcher for the Jets. Because besides Garrett Wilson, they don't really have anybody else that, you can throw deep to Corey Davis, you can throw deep down Lazard, but that burner type to really get behind the safeties, I feel like Hardman and Garrett Wilson are really your best bets at that. So, not too much to know from those receivers outside of that Tyler Conklin block. Lazard made a few nice plays. Hardman, I think Hardman made a nice catch on a bad receiver screen. Zach Wilson's still working on those screen passes. It wasn't terrible. At least wasn't 5 feet over his head this time, but he did have to scoop it up the ground and he got 5 yards on that one. But yeah, I guess before we get to defense, Zach Wilson obviously had that sick 35-yard scamper. It was 35 yards, right? I don't know. He did the crazy scamper with the spin move, making guys miss, really showing his speed down the sideline. We get the highlight for Hard Knocks from this game, because without that play, I don't really know what they would have focused on from the game in Hard Knocks. I'm excited to see all the mic'd up from the sideline from that moment. But what did you make of Zach's performance? So, feels like more of the same from the last few games.
I think so. I think a lot of the same positives and negatives. He's getting the ball out quicker, more willing to check it down. We're seeing some progressions, fewer dangerous throws, but at the same time, accuracy still shaky, still plenty of work to do on that. I mentioned the Lazard throw. He missed that. You mentioned the Hardman screen. Not ideal. So yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of the same. A lot of checkdowns. I know it's preseason, but
I think that's more Hackett and the coaching. I think they've really tried to drill it into his head, take what the defense gives you, see an open man, throw it to him. But situationally, it'll be 3rd and 15, and they throw, to the running back immediately too. It's not even let the play develop.
There was one play where he was scrambling left, and he took the scramble for a few yards.
Yeah.
But someone separated deep on the scramble drill. It would have been a crazy throw, but the type of Zach Wilson throw that he possibly would have attempted first 2 years. This time he didn't, which is, I actually thought it was open and a decent opportunity, but I think it kind of shows the mentality change he's trying to make, which is in the long run probably a good thing. So that was notable. But in general, yeah, they haven't really dialed anything up, and it's not even like they're there and he's not taking it. It's just everything that's the majority of what's been called has been quick, and those options aren't really there. So yeah, maybe they are just trying to focus on those main things that they want to fix for him, more so than here's the whole offense, go run it.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway from Zach Wilson's preseason so far, and again, I'm curious how much they'll give him against the Giants. If Rodgers gets, let's say Rodgers gets a series or two, I think if Rodgers goes down there and leads a touchdown drive, I think they might just pull him. So let's say, do you think maybe you give Zach the rest of the first quarter, second quarter, and third quarter, and Boyle gets the fourth?
Yeah, I would say max 2 drives for Rodgers. If he scores the first drive, take him out. If not, give him a second. We're not going past that.
Yeah.
Then you can have Zach finish out the half.
But I think the thing that's really stood out to me is just he looks more comfortable. He seems to be playing more loose. It lines up with everything he said. He's having more fun. He's not focused as much on being perfect. It seems like he's starting to figure out the mental side of things. That does come with age. He is still incredibly young. I mean, that was a big takeaway from that first Hard Knocks episode. I said it on here, but when you just see him on the sideline after the big completion he had to Taylor, and he's talking really fast and his eyes are wide, and he's like, oh, he's still a kid. I mean, I'm the exact same age as him.
I was going to say, I could totally relate with that. If I have that sort of moment and I want to tell someone about it, just talking a mile a minute, words are coming out faster than you could think of them. So
right.
I say that with that.
We're, the same age as him, but so he's, he seems to be figuring it out a little bit. It's not like he's had about one wow play every game, if we're going to count that little touchdown against Carolina. Carolina's probably his cleanest game though, but he's had one highlight every game, and then other than that, just kind of seems more comfortable, calm, leading drives, accepting that they can punt and play field position with this defense that they have, has avoided the catastrophic mistakes. He's had one pass in this game that could have been intercepted. It was close, but it would have been a crazy. You know what I'm talking about on the right sideline, quick out route. I'm trying to remember who's two. It wasn't that close being intercepted. Yeah. It wasn't that close being intercepted. It was just there was maybe an opportunity there, but he can throw the fastball. So yeah, I mean, I the play you didn't talk about too. I mean, it was open, but he had that play action and then to Brownlee over the middle for a big chunk. It was a quick throw, man coverage, and that does look simple, but he's missed those throws so many times throughout his career that I do think we should acknowledge it that is, that was an NFL throw right there, and I do like what we've seen from him. Not enough to declare him the future to take the reins from Rodgers for the next 15 years, as Rodgers declared. But I do think he's making some good strides. I'm happy for him. I feel like he's in the perfect place to develop into something, and we're finally getting to see what a young, highly drafted Jets quarterback can be if they get to sit behind a veteran. But he's not there yet, but sits behind him this whole season. We'll see what he looks like next preseason. Hopefully that's the next time we see him after Saturday. Given the NFL, we might see him at some point this year, but he does look like a competent backup. I think that's the biggest thing. Is there are some question marks about should they bring in somebody else? They're Mike White's leaving. This is a Super Bowl. If Rodgers were to go down for 6 weeks or so, can you trust Zach Wilson? I don't think you can declare him the next franchise QB after Rodgers yet, but I do think you feel pretty good about he can be a mid-level QB2. There are a lot of bad QB2s in this league, and a lot of them don't have the ceiling of Zach Wilson. Some of them don't have the same floor, but I do feel a lot better about Zach Wilson as the backup. Let's talk about the defense a little bit. Al Woods making his debut. I don't think we talked enough about Quentin Jefferson and Al Woods and what they're going to bring to this defensive line, because the backup defensive tackle, I know they lost Rankins and he was pretty good last year, but the upgrade from Nathan Shepard and Rankins was good, but the upgrade from Nathan Shepard especially, and being able to put a guy like Al Woods who's going to be dominant in the run game. He's our version. He's our Vince Wilfork, just a big space eater in this 4-3, putting him next to Quinnen Williams and rundowns. Then also having Quentin Jefferson, who can, I think he led the Seahawks in sacks last year with like 5.5. So you have him, you have JFM, you have Clemens that you can move inside. They have some real pass rushing DTs that they can put next to Quinnen. So, a lot of attention on this defensive line has gone towards the edge. And last year I felt like the depth of defensive tackle behind Quinnen wasn't great. I don't think Solomon Thomas is that great. Shepard was pretty bad. Rankins had a nice bounce back year, but bringing in Woods and Quentin Jefferson, I think that's really going to be that's going to do wonders for the Jets as they go through this year and injuries inevitably hit, and they need to have those guys play more. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Just thought we'd give them a shout out.
Well, yeah, both guys have played, and they've already shown glimpses of what they bring to the table. And as we know, both of these guys are very particular players. They bring, there's one side of the ball where you prefer them strongly versus the other. And they've played, and they've already shown some of those flashes. And with Jefferson, it's the explosion, it's the pass rushing, and he actually had a really good run play. I think it was the first play of the game against the Bucs.
I thought he was offsides.
I thought he was offside. It was the most perfect snap timing I've probably ever seen, and he blows up that play, which is funny because if you look at the play-by-play, he actually didn't get credit for that because technically nobody touched the guy, the ball carrier. And Ashton Davis runs in and touches him, and he gets a 5-yard tackle for loss. Wow, Ashton Davis.
That PFF grade looking good.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a great play, but I mean, typically you don't expect the run defense from him, but he's boom or bust there. You'll get plays like that, and sometimes he'll overrun it, but the pass rushing is what's really impressive. And he had the sack against the Panthers last week. He had some more good reps in this game. He led the Seahawks interior defensive line in sacks last year. He was their best pass rusher inside with a 5.5 sacks last year. What are you going to say?
Never mind. Keep going.
I mean, I try to subtly correct if there's something that you say, but I make mistakes too. So you definitely correct me if I say anything wrong. I make a lot of mistakes.
I don't make it subtly. You're a lot nicer to me.
That's for sure. But
I get texts sometimes like, "You're so mean to Michael." I'm like, "No, it's just some brotherly. We're just talking football here,
Yeah,
we're friends.
It's all good." But yeah. So to see Jefferson out there has been cool, and then Al Woods as well. He played. I believe this was his first appearance, right? Didn't play in the first 2 games.
No.
But yeah, he had a really good run stuff where he showed you exactly what you hope he brings to the defensive line, which is just a big body eating space in the front of that defensive line. He only played a few snaps, but on this one play, he ate up a double team right at the point of attack where the run was going, held his ground, didn't allow any movement, shed the double team, made the tackle for his stuff on first down, And that's what he does. It's never going to be, I mean, sometimes it'll be flashy, but for the most part, it's going to be just gritty stuff like that where he's eating up blocks. Even sometimes if he's not making the tackle, just having a guy like that who could chew up so much space and eat blocks is going to allow other players to get in. It's almost like sometimes defensive linemen are like blockers for the linebackers in the way that the O-line blocks for the running backs. Sometimes it goes in the reverse way when you're really watching it from that perspective. So he has that sort of impact for the defense.
Yeah, this run defense is going to be really good this year, and that's going to help him win playoff games. Because it's not just Woods, it's not just Quinnen, but having CJ Mosley behind them as well, who, in pass coverage, he's a little older, he's not as athletic. He does seem to be, we haven't seen him on the field, but he does seem to be a little skinnier than even last year. So we'll see how, what his athleticism looks like in pass coverage. But his ability to set fronts and change plays and identify runs is a real plus. So having him and then Quincy flying behind, like you said, if Woods is a pseudo blocker, having Quincy fly behind him as the pseudo running back and blowing up plays is definitely there. So, and then having, I think Johnson was good as a run defender as a rookie, and I think he's only showed up to camp in better shape. You have JFM. I mean, so this defense can wreak havoc on the quarterbacks, but I think teams are going to struggle to run the ball, because that really is kind of the weakness, I think, of this style of defense sometimes, is you can see them get burned with if a team has a really good offensive line, if they can run the ball, if they can run those draws, those screens. But if you can run the ball against this wide down front, it makes it really hard. I mean, look at 2021 with this run. Rankins was really bad that year against the run, and you really saw that the effect of that. And so bring in Woods, having CJ Mosley, all the other run defenders that they have. I mean, I think that's also part of the reason they like JFM outside and not as much inside, even though he can win inside on third down. But having a big body like that who can play defensive end on those rundowns, it really helps. So I think
quickly, I like what you mentioned with, how Al Woods can set things up for Quincy, because when you think about it, Quincy hasn't really gotten the chance, or any of the Jets linebackers, to play behind that kind of defensive tackle, other than Quinnen, obviously. But last couple years,
his brother his whole life.
I'm saying the last 2 years, like other than Quinnen, most of the other Jets defensive tackles have been gap shooting, athletic guys. So it's like, even if they win, they're kind of only taking one player with them. Sometimes they'll draw a double if they win, quickly enough. But they haven't had a guy like Al Woods who's going to be there inside, and he's going to be occupying blockers. So two guys will be on him, and that'll create open lanes for the linebackers. And Rankins did it sometimes last year, but again, he's more of that smaller defensive tackle. I think he was around 300, who's more there for his ability to win with athleticism and technique, more so than eating blocks. But having Al Woods in there, and I know initially, like, I was skeptical of it, and some of us had questions, like, doesn't seem like he's the greatest scheme fit for this type of defense. But as long as you're playing him in the right situations, and you're making sure he's not out there in too many pass situations, and he's not costing you in the pass game, as long as you make sure he's out there for the run, I think he can really help plug up some of those issues the Jets have had with defending the run game, especially up the middle, because, the runs that have hurt the Jets the most have been draws, those delayed handoffs where they take advantage of the defensive line exploding up the field. That naturally creates the gaps, and then the running back just runs straight through it. Without Woods out there, that's not going to happen, because he's not going to be exploding up the field. He'll be eating those blocks. And then you could have your linebackers behind him, especially a guy like Quincy, who's so explosive, just using the open lanes that Al Woods creates. So it's a unique match that the Jets haven't really had the past couple of years. And I'm curious to see how impactful that can be for the run defense.
Yeah, and him and Jefferson both seem really excited to get into this defense, to be able to, I know we'd criticized the way how much they rotate the defensive linemen in 2021 and then the beginning of last year. But these guys get to stay fresh. They get to attack upfield. Woods will eat blocks, but he doesn't have to necessarily just be a gap filler. He can fill gaps while attacking up the field. And so he seems excited about that. I'm really excited to watch, this defensive line at full strength. I mean, man, can 3 weeks just be up already? I want to be at MetLife 3 weeks from now. Aaron Rodgers running out of the tunnel, 80s white uniforms.
I can't believe how fast 3 preseason games went by, but I feel like the next 3 weeks are going to be a lot slower.
That's the drag.
The previous 3 have been.
Well, especially
because there's a big gap after the last preseason game. That's kind of what makes it long.
Okay, well, we get the Rodgers debut this weekend. We have that to look forward to. Then you got the cut down. Then there is that big drag, but then football is
It's Hard Knocks. There's One Jets Drive.
That's true. That's true.
We'll hold you over.
And then that Thursday, that first game, that Lions-Chiefs game, which is just kind of a weird game to me to open up the season, but whatever. That'll be here soon enough, and then football's officially back. So yeah, let's do our 53-man rosters. I have a number of questions. I promise this time we did actually count out our rosters ahead of time. Last time was a bit of a clusterfuck trying to count and podcast at the same time, but we did count these up.
I made a Google Sheets doc that counts the number of players that are listed, so I don't have to do the math.
So I guess we'll run through it. The first question, because before we get into it, though, because I think this can help, is one of the things that we didn't talk about last time that I did put out a tweet and discuss it is guys like Jarek Bernard-Converse. We'll see about Carter Warren. It does seem like he'll fall into this category. We'll see about other guys. Abanikanda. I saw that video of Carl Lawson running. His back looks pretty tight. But there's a number of guys that'll have to make it through the initial 53-man cut, but then will be placed on IR, which they'll have to be on there for at least 4 weeks, if not longer. If they go on it before the 53-man cut, they won't be able to return at all. And, if they, that's pretty much the main thing. They're not. I don't think they could cut a guy like Jarek Bernard-Converse. I don't really think they would. They drafted him, so he's gonna have to make the 53. They're gonna have to cut somebody, place JBC on the IR, and then bring somebody back. So before we get into the 53, let's just say it's Carter Warren and JBC. Let's say Abanikanda's fine. Let's say Carl Lawson's fine. Let's say Tippmann's fine. There's no other major injuries. It's just JBC and Carter Warren. Who are those two guys that you see them cutting and bringing back? Because they technically won't be on this 53, but they will be on the week 1 roster.
Should we mention these now, or should we do it at the end? These are like bottom of the roster guys. Should we go top down?
All right, fine. Because then they'll add up to 55 then. That was all I was trying to avoid, but whatever.
Okay.
All right, QB, Rodgers and Wilson. We'll do our practice squad at the end as well, but I have Boyle going to the practice squad.
No Boyle for me. I have had him in previous predictions, not here.
But he is on the practice squad for you, right?
Yeah.
All right, running back, Hall, Cook, Carter, Abanikanda.
Yeah, and I guess throw Bodden into that. Do you have Bodden?
I do have Bodden, but he is one of my cuts and bring backs. I don't see anybody claiming him.
So yeah, I've been making it initially.
I think he's a guy that they can cut and bring back pretty easily. I was originally, well, I'll get to him in a second. Sorry. But Knight, I guess we're cutting and trying to stash in the practice squad.
If he makes I have him on the practice squad.
Yeah, we'll see if he makes it there.
But, not necessarily guarantee he makes it there, but got to play a little bit better in the last 2 games to make sure anyone would want him.
Now, receiver. Now, this is really where it gets interesting because I've gone back and forth. We all have the same 5 of Wilson, Lazard, Davis, Hardman, and Cobb. I was good with that. Then I had one extra roster spot, and I was deciding between another linebacker, another safety, another corner. But I went with receiver 6, and I gave it to Malik Taylor. But I got to say, Gibson is right on his tail, and it could really change with another nice performance this week. I just thought that Taylor, he's got the experience with Rodgers. He's had a nice camp, knows the offense. He plays special teams. I think there's going to be some other cuts in this roster that we'll get to in a bit that could be a loss at special teams. They need those special teams types of players, guys who can be the gunner opposite Hardy. And generally, as a receiver 6, you want that 5th or 6th receiver playing special teams. And Cobb, I don't know if you're going to have Cobb out there covering punts. So I think they need another guy to do that. And that's why I went with Malik Taylor. But Gibson, man, the return ability is there. So I was really close to going with him, but I went with Taylor for the versatility.
I have the same. Yeah, I think it's important to have special teams ability with that last receiver spot, like you said. And Gibson's in the mix as well. Brownlee finally improved his case. He had a really good game. So a lot of names in the hat here. I do think they will have a 6th receiver. Charles, you and I were watching the punts. He was getting featured as a gunner.
Their first team.
Unit. I don't know if he's made any tackles yet. I'm not entirely sure, but he was getting those reps. But Taylor had a big tackle. He's played it a lot in the regular season with the Packers too, and he's been pretty solid. So I'm going with Taylor, but there are a lot of names here.
All right, tight end. This is a change for me as well. Conklin, Uzomah, Ruckert. I'm keeping Zach Kuntz. I was going to cut him. Well, what's yours?
I just have the 3. I don't have a 4th tight end.
I went back and forth on this. Hold on, there's a fire truck going by. These takes are too hot. I'll let it go by. Okay, we're good. Should I cut that?
No, it's pretty funny.
I will leave it in. Okay. Occasionally I'll forget to cut something, and then I'll check the comments and be like, somebody be like, "Oh, they forgot to edit this one." I'm like, "Shit, Michael, cut it out."
Usually it's me who forgets.
We've gone back and forth. I kept Kuntz. I just feel like I think he could be something for the Jets. Obviously his athletic profile's insane. I think he's had a nice preseason. He's been better as a blocker than I thought he would be. I did really think he was just going to be, especially coming from Old Dominion, being a 7th round tight end with a crazy athletic score like that. I kind of thought he was going to be just basically a receiver trying to learn how to play tight end. But I think he's been better as a blocker than I thought. Not to say that he's been amazing. I don't know what you've made of Zach Kuntz's preseason.
I agree with that. Like there haven't been any highlights really to talk about, but I kind of expected him to just be completely embarrassing because I mean, what else would you expect if you have that athletic profile? Right. And you go in the 7th round, especially coming out of Old Dominion, you must be really bad at football. So I did have pretty low expectations, and he hasn't been that bad, I will say. So I would give him that.
And the other thing is I'm going to go light at linebacker. And so again, special teams, I think they want to develop him. I think a team could claim him if they cut him too. So I went back and forth, initially had him getting cut and brought back, but I was like, you know what? I think they keep Kuntz. They kept 4 tight ends last year with the Yeboah. It's a good special teams position. This offense is going to rely heavily on 12 personnel. Uzama's had injury issues before. Actually, all their tight ends have had injury issues before. So it's possible Kuntz could even be thrown into action with Rodgers as a rookie. So I'm going to keep Kuntz. That's a change. Offensive line, all the same. Oh, by the way, I should mention on Taylor, just the last one. I do have Taylor getting cut and brought back. So him and Bodden are my 2 cuts and bring back because on the offensive line, Carter Warren, I think he'll make the initial 53, then be placed on IR. But the rest, I think it should be pretty much the same for all of us. Brown, Mitchell, Becton, Turner at tackle, Tomlinson, AVT, Schweitzer at guard, and then McGovern and Tippmann at center. I think Schweitzer's actually had a really nice preseason as well. I was kind of lower on him. I had Cologne higher than him, but he really packs a punch. In pass protection, he had a pancake against the Bucs. I've noticed him drive a little bit in the run game. So Schweitzer's better than I thought he'd be. So the depth on this offensive line, especially in the interior, is great. Tackle could get a little shaky if the injury bug really bites and Billy Turner's out there sucking. But this offensive line, the concerns were a little overblown, I think. Now that everybody's getting healthy.
Yeah, now that it's coming into form, I think you could really see the picture a lot more clearly. I agree. I feel like the concerns have been overblown a little bit because everything else is going so well that it's kind of the only thing to talk about.
Yeah.
So that's. I mean, not that the concerns are unfair because they are. It is a very important position in front of your new superstar quarterback, and there are a lot of injury-prone guys that need to prove themselves. So they're legitimate questions, but I don't know if it's like this isn't the worst offensive line situation in the league.
I was going to say, a lot of teams have bad offensive lines. I mean, the Jets have certainly seen their fair share of them. I just think, most of the best big athletes go to the defensive line. So there's a dearth of quality offensive linemen, especially when you get in these preseason games and get to fill out the depth. And the Jets have had some guys who have been injured, and so maybe, the casual fan doesn't know all about AVT or Mekhi Becton, but they do have some legitimate pieces on this O-line and some depth to back it up in the interior. I'm not saying it's top 10 offensive line, but I think it could be in that 15
range. Like I would say, I think the biggest misconception is where the baseline is. Like if everyone is healthy, this is at least an average offensive line, at least. Considering injury concerns, it does have a very low floor. And I would say it. Yeah, go ahead.
What offensive line of the Jets would you take? I mean, obviously the Rex years, but like over this offensive line, what's the last one you would take over it?
Yeah, probably nothing since then. I mean, maybe they were pretty solid in 2015, but
a lot of it is also having a veteran quarterback too.
I guess 2015 they played pretty well. Ivory had a great season running the ball. Fitzpatrick did not get sacked a lot that year. Partially, he got the ball out quick, but I mean, they still had veteran experience with that group. So maybe that, but other than that, it's been pretty awful for the most part. But yeah, I feel like it has downside because of the injury risk. It's probably a more injury-prone group than most, just because of Becton and older Brown, AVT. Still, we have to still see what's up with him. But when they're all playing, the talent is there are a lot of offensive lines that don't have as much talent as I would say Brown, Tomlinson, McGovern, Vera Tucker. Becton lineup. So it has a high ceiling. I think the midpoint is higher than people realize. It's just the injury risk that is the big concern.
Defensive line should be no surprise.
Also, I have the same.
Oh yeah, sorry, no,
and I agree on Schweitzer. He's at a good. I kind of went on a tangent there, but yeah, I agree. Schweitzer's at a good preseason. Does it cancel out his thousands of regular season snaps before this? No, but as a backup, I think he's a quality player.
He had posted a video of himself working out. I'm trying to remember exactly what he was doing. Do you remember? He wasn't pushing a truck. He was doing something where it looked insane, the amount of weight that he was lifting. And I was like, this guy's, the very least, he's going to be strong. And he's definitely proved that in the preseason. Do you remember what it was?
I don't remember that. I'm going to have to look it up.
He was like, it was like a sled with a bunch of weight or something. Or maybe, yeah, it was on Twitter. I saw it posted. He picks, I'm trying to remember exactly what, I just remember seeing that and being like, all right, this guy could suck, but at the very least, he's maybe the strongest offensive lineman on the team besides Becton.
All right, I have to look.
I'll find it. I'll retweet it. This random Wes Schweitzer workout fit on your timeline. Look out for it. Defensive line, JFM, Johnson, Clemens, Lawson, Huff, McDonald as your edge. And then the interior, Quinnen, Woods, Jefferson, and Solomon Thomas. I did say this to you earlier, and I tweeted it to Joe Blewett. If it were me, if we're just ignoring locker room impact and like veteran leadership, I would cut Solomon Thomas and keep Tanzel Smart as that smaller defensive tackle who, plays physical, high motor. I feel like Tanzel Smart flashes every time he's on the field. I will say I do feel like they could probably stash him on the practice squad, although at this point, maybe not. That Carcucci board comment got him plenty of national press. Maybe
that'll definitely help. That'll definitely help you out.
Let's look into this guy.
Going to be teams that have him higher up in their mind just when they think of defensive tackles because of that.
But I don't see that happening. Thomas is well liked. He's been with Solid for a long time. Veteran guy. I think wasn't he Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee too at one point? So
yeah, was he their nominee last year? I think he was, right?
He might have been, yeah. And just high motor, he eats up blocks. But I would keep Smart over Thomas, but I don't think that's going to happen, especially in a year where you're going for a Super Bowl. You want all the veteran leadership you can get. Line, same for you.
Yeah, I have the same line. I agree with you. I would be open to that because it feels like every preseason, 3 years in a row now, Smart just comes out, shows explosiveness, snap timing. Seems like the type of guy they'd like, but they love.
I think Thomas, they do. They just don't have space for him.
Yeah.
But we'll do a practice squad at the way in, but I do have Smart making it to the practice squad. We'll see though. Linebacker, I'm going 4 here. I've gone back and forth on this. This has changed a number of times. But yeah, mostly Quincy Sherwood and then Zaire Barnes. We know Saul likes Chaz Surratt. There we go. I always mispronounce it. Surratt. But he's missed the last 2 preseason games. We'll see what happens this week. But I think that injury is going to hold him back, and I think that they'll be able to stash him on the practice squad. There's been a number of linebackers that have played well. I mean, that is Saul and Ulbricht's MO. I think they feel like they can just bring athletes in, coach them up, and let them loose. So I think they can go light here. And then also they have a few safeties here that have been playing kind of a pseudo linebacker role with Amos, Whitehead. We'll get into the safeties. There's another one too, but save that. Keep some suspense. But I think they have safeties that can kind of play that box role, and they'll be able to stash any other linebacker candidates on the practice squad if there are major injuries. What do your linebackers look like?
So I have 4 on the initial 53, but I do have a 5th guy coming in after Warren and Bernard Converse going injured reserve. Would you like to know who this player is?
Surratt.
It is not Surratt.
Guavin.
This is maybe my weird pick because there's always a random player in here.
Sharilis.
Like last year, would you say Tony Adams was probably that player?
Yeah, there's always a wild card. It's normally
there's always one that nobody
I know it is
on their prediction. And I have Nick Vigil getting on here as the 5th linebacker. I mean, he brings you special teams ability. He's a veteran. This is a guy who's started a lot in the league. He's got 53 starts over the past 6 seasons. I remember him playing for the Bengals. He's on the Chargers and the Vikings, Cardinals last year. He started a lot. He can play in special teams. I feel like for a 5th linebacker, especially with Barnes being the other guy, someone who maybe you're not totally trusting of in terms of being able to play a role this year, I think he's the type of guy I would like. I'm saying me, but I think they would.
You don't think they can stash him on the practice squad? I kind of felt like him, Sharilis, Aguavin, like all those guys. I was like, is anybody going to claim those guys? I feel like you can free up an extra spot and stack them on the practice squad.
I think they could. I couldn't think of anyone I preferred. Like there's no cornerbacks I like here. I already have a 6th receiver. Maybe I could put a 4th tight end instead of him, but I just feel like I think Barnes is like a developmental player. Like they have 3 starting linebackers.
So you're keeping.
I would rather have a veteran linebacker who's ahead of Barnes in terms of who would I put in if someone gets hurt.
Just to be noted, you're keeping veteran Nick Vigil, linebacker they just signed 5 weeks ago, over Joe Douglas draft pick and super high ceiling beast RAS scorer Zach Kuntz. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Who also plays special teams that they could maybe develop and would maybe get claimed if they did cut him.
That is true.
That because it was the same thought process I had. I had Surratt, not Vigil, and I was going to cut Kuntz, and I was like, well, they drafted Kuntz. I do feel like out of the two of them, I feel like Kuntz is the one that could get claimed. And if one of these linebackers did get claimed, they have plenty of guys that can fill that role. But if they cut Kuntz and like the Pats claimed him, I would be so freaking pissed. It's like, yeah, you have your Bo, you have EJ Jenkins, but
I don't know. He hasn't impressed me that much. I wouldn't be worried. I know,
but I feel like. Yeah, but I feel like he can develop into something. Think about.
They also have Bawden on the roster, and he's kind of like
he'll be inactive for most of the season, I think. But if injuries do hit, and keep in mind, I mean, Uzama's missed time, Conklin's missed time, Ruckert's missed time, you can activate him, and also you're keeping him for 2024, 2025 because that ceiling's there. Let him develop under Middleton. Don't risk cutting him. That I've gone back and forth. My last one I only had 3 tight ends, so I've changed my tune on that after watching him, being like, you know what, he's not a terrible run blocker. And he does have the ceiling of being a legitimate starting tight ends with that athletic score alone. So I don't know. That was my
like I said. There's always a weird pick. I'm glad.
I'm glad.
I like their linebackers. Right. I think Barnes is more developmental guy. Let's get a veteran as that primary backup.
I could see it happening. They cut Pinnock last year to keep Davis, and I didn't like it. And we'll see how that turns out. Pinnock seems to be doing well for the Giants. But yeah, every year there's cuts that happen that anger us. But then you have to be like, all right. They are in the they are in the locker room. They're seeing every practice. They're in the meeting room.
And also, if you think of the type of season, like this is a Super Bowl type season. It's not like most years, so maybe they could value a Vigil over a Zach Kuntz.
What is Vigil bringing you that Kuntz isn't though?
Being able to play.
Well, Kuntz can play special teams. I would say he's a bigger threat. You don't think he's better than? You don't think he could develop better than Vigil after like 5 or 6 weeks
in the future seasons, not necessarily this year. All I've seen from him on special teams is running really fast in a straight line. Like I've actually watched his kickoff blocks and his punt blocks. He just runs in a straight line.
You got me there. I did not
very
watch
fast.
I did not.
Admittedly, he's extremely fast. You can see it, so the upside is there. But as soon as someone like tries to block him or he engages, he's just washed out. Like he doesn't have counters to blocks or anything. He's very raw. I'm not confident he helps you win games this year in any way.
Well, you did say the 5th linebacker or linebacker in general is an important special team.
And Vigil's been pretty good. He's made some really good hits coming downhill.
Yeah, all right. I don't hate it. I have him on my practice squad. But yeah, I mean that linebacker spot is a good special team spot. But like they have Bawden, they have the extra tight ends. I don't know. We'll see. Let's get to the DBs. Interesting question here is. The other thing outside of the guys going on IR is Eccles is suspended week 1. So my initial 53 with the corners is Sauce, Reed, Hall, Eccles, Michael Carter II, and then JBC going to IR. But considering Eccles is going to be inactive for that first game, who do you have replacing? Is there any of these backup corners between Craig James, Jimmy Moreland? Why am I forgetting the Derek Langford? Any of those guys impress you enough, or do you think that they just roll with the 4 corners?
That's what I have. I have them just rolling with it for the one game, just because like I don't think any of those guys have impressed me enough to say that I think they'll make the team. I feel like the whole backup cornerback group has just been torched the whole preseason.
Isn't that an extra spot though? Because if Eccles is suspended, it's like don't they free up another spot? So you have to give it to somebody for a week. Maybe that's Nick Vigil.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't have him included in this, and I didn't add another corner, so someone in here is extra that you don't have, I guess.
All right.
Do you have another corner?
No, I just have Eccles listed, but I was going to talk it through with you. I think Moreland's probably been the best. The only thing is that I think it's going to be Craig James. You want to know why? Here's my prediction why. If Michael Carter II were for some reason to get injured in that first game, they need somebody who can play the nickel. Like, yeah, you could maybe move DJ Reed inside, but you're not putting Bryce Hall at the nickel. Craig James has been playing outside and nickel. He was the starting nickel for this last game. And I think for most of the season, if MC2 went down, Eccles would slide in at the nickel spot. So I think because of that, because Eccles is kind of your backup nickel, I would go Craig James. So I think Eccles is out week 1. They bring back Craig James. That's my prediction. Activate from the practice squad.
So you do have him on your 53.
No, he's on my practice squad, but I'm just gonna act.
So did you include Eccles? Just
yes.
Looking past the first game.
Yeah, Eccles is
on. I don't have him on here.
Oh, not this again. Fuck.
I don't have him on here because he's suspended. So I figured this was the initial 53.
I put 55 guys on here, and then I have 2 with.
If I put him on, I would take out Vigil. I would just do that.
I'll go. Okay. So you're saying Vigil only made. Well, then where are we different then? God, fuck, I don't want to do this again.
So when Eccles comes back,
all right, let's get to the safety.
He'd basically be on the team for 1 week, I guess.
You know what you should do is count your guys while I go through the safeties here to make sure you're at 53 again. I swear to God.
Yeah, I do have 53 without Eccles.
Okay, so if you bring Eccles on, then who's getting cut? Vigil? Okay,
yeah.
Most of them, we're not too different. Back to the practice squad, Mr. Vigil goes. So you have 4 linebackers then?
Yeah.
So then that must mean you have 5 safeties?
I have 4 safeties.
God, what?
With one of them being Bernard Converse.
Is he on IR?
I have Trey Dean being signed to replace him.
I have a feeling one of us messed up again. How is this possible?
It's impossible for me to mess up. I have the power.
All right, I'll count it up again. All right, fine. You are the numbers guy. Shit. Am I dumb? Let's go. Safeties, I have Adams, Whitehead, Amos, and then I do have Trey Dean. I initially had Ashton Davis on here because I felt he gives you some free safety versatility where it's like, Amos can do it, but I like him a lot more in the box. He also is a special teams guy, but then you reminded me they free $2.7 million in cap space by cutting him. So once you said that, I was like, Trey Dean's been very impressive. I'll keep Dean over Ashton Davis. Initially, I was going to keep both of them.
Did you forget Hardy at corner, making it 5?
No, I have Hardy there too.
All right, do you want to go through and count?
I'll count.
Right.
Just the other thing is though, with Dean, Amos, I feel like you can go light at linebacker because both those guys can go and play that kind of pseudo linebacker role. But I'm really happy with Dean. We have a nice track record with the undrafted free agents.
Yes.
Bryce Huff on.
Looks like it's going to continue.
2020 Bryce Huff, 2021 JFM.
Mentioned him during reviewing the film. He had a fantastic game against the Bucs, and we didn't talk enough about his first 2 games. He's been really solid.
Friend of the pod. 3. We gotta bump him up. You've been doing a nice job. Yeah. He quote tweets all your praise of him though. I don't know if you've seen that. You don't look at your notifications anymore. After all,
I haven't seen that. Did he?
After the Dalvin
positive?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He retweets all your ones. You haven't seen that. Damn. I gotta really remind you because all the Dalvin Cook hate you've gone into hiding.
Well, I've always done that.
I'll just give you the bat signal. He's been he quotes tweet all your stuff. He goes like all praise to God, all that stuff. So
nice.
Yeah, his timeline's like all you right now. All right. But yeah, trading has been awesome, and I think he's done enough
maybe I'm doing the wrong thing because now he's gonna get claimed if the Jets waive him.
No, I think he'll make it. I think Davis
good for him though.
I think Davis freeing up 2.7. I think that with Dean playing well, it gives you special teams, box safety, can do that linebacker stuff as well. I think they really like him. I think he is their undrafted free agent to make it this time. And then the special teamers, Zerline, Morstead, Hennessy, Hardy. Morstead's been freaking beast this preseason. All right, I'm gonna count my guys up. Let me hear about your practice squad guys while I recount for I swear to God the 20th time. I got to 55 because it's like I got to be 53, and so I have the 2 extra IR guys.
Yeah, that's what I have.
You have 55. All right, you talk about practice squad.
I need to say all 16 practice squad guys.
Yeah, we'll talk. You got to give me at least 30 seconds to count here.
All right, so here we go. 16 practice squad players coming up. Let's go right through this. Zonovan Knight, Zach Kuntz, Irvin Charles, Xavier Gibson, Jason Brownlee, Tristan Colon, Kenny Yeboah, EJ Jenkins, Tim Boyle, Dane Cruikshank. Who's James? I just have the last names written. Craig James, right?
Yeah.
Chaz Surratt, Greg Sinat, Tanzel Smart, Marquise Waters, and Sherilis. What's his first name? Claudin Sherilis. There we go. That's my practice squad.
You messed up my count, damn it.
How did I mess
up?
I'm
a guy over. Yeah, I'm a guy over. I got to decide now.
There we go. See, I made the formula, so I couldn't mess up here.
You're right. Shit.
Where do you think you're too 4, high? 5. Like, is there a position you're higher than you would usually go? So I have.
Actually, no, I'm not.
You have 10 O-line?
Oh, I think we're the same.
Okay, what is this plot twist?
I'm okay.
Okay.
27 plus 24, 51 plus 4. That's 55. I'm good. I have 55 players. So we're good.
Yeah, that's right.
Where was our difference?
Offense, 25 defense. I have 27 offense.
All right, just to not subject the listeners to this again, I'm going to pause this. Let's pause this and really tighten this up real quick. All right? Hold on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I was not stupid. Michael's program was stupid. Would you like to explain?
I was let down by my formula on Google Sheets. It counts the number of cells that have text in it. One of my cells on the offensive side had a space in it, so I couldn't see. It was getting counted. I was one short.
That was 15 minutes. I declare victory, though. Jeez. All right.
Victory for you. Another loss for the nerds.
Yeah. Victory royale. Anything else on the safeties, DBs? I was so distracted by feeling like, how do we blow it again? But so I guess to wrap up that discussion, you wouldn't sign another corner with Eccles out?
No, I would roll for 1 week.
All right, cool. Yeah, I guess the difference is you're on your 53 now. You have Eccles and Vigil. So
now the only difference in our entire roster is you have Kuntz, I have Vigil.
Yeah, and we'll see how the people feel about that one. I feel like if you're gonna prioritize a roster spot, it would be to Kuntz and Vigil. You can, but I see what you're saying. I do. He is in a Super Bowl year. He's the better special teamer. That fifth linebacker is a crucial special teams role. Kuntz is more a developmental guy, but I feel like they do have special teamers to make up for it. But yeah, all right, that's the updated 53. Your practice squad guys, my practice. I don't have to get through my practice squad guys, but yeah, I mean, pretty much all the same. Cruikshank was the only guy that I was kind of maybe considering over Davis because once I cut Davis, because he does have some free safety versatility. He can man up with some tight ends. He's played special teams, but ultimately didn't do that. I would say, yep, activate Craig week 1. And then, the big guys on practice squad, I would say, like, if they can get Zonovan Knight there, Yeboah, Brownlee, Gibson, they'll probably put a few offensive linemen on there as well. Maybe Greg Sinnat and Tristan Colon. I'm curious if Colon will make it there. Defensive line, we'll see if Smart can make it there. I think the other defensive lineman that stood out is probably Bruce Hector, although he did have a bad whiff on Trask in this game. I think they'll stack up the linebackers there with Surratt and Chirilis and Nick Vigil. And then, the DBs, I have Cruikshank, Craig, and Moreland. So I did end up just giving my whole practice squad. But anyways, I think that'll do it for us. I'm just looking at, I think we're good. That'll do it for us. You can follow us at CYJ Pod on Twitter. Myself, Ben W. Blessington, Michael at Michael_Nania. Go to JetsXFactor.com, best place to go for Jets content. Subscribe to the Jets X Factor YouTube. We post all our podcasts there. Michael, are we gonna use video ever again during the season? We're gonna stick to just the audio. What are we thinking?
TBD.
Let's be honest with the people here. I think during the season,
with the podcast, it's TBD.
During the season, should we bring back the video? We always get comments.
It's TBD, I said.
TBD, maybe.
Gotta keep the people on their toes.
That's true. Rate, review, subscribe on iTunes. It helps us out a ton. I think that's it. Michael, last thoughts. I opened. I know
we got nothing to say now because we already covered everything.
You can give your beat. You could give the beat writer rankings that we were doing earlier, unless we want to keep do that. No, just maybe I'll pass on putting my name on those takes. I will say this. Brian Costello complaining every preseason. I feel like I don't care about that. I can say this. Brian Costello complaining every preseason about having to cover the Jets is unbelievably lame. You know how many like young sports reporters would want to cover the Jets for the New York Post, and this guy who doesn't report anything. And look, his writing is, I'll read it occasionally. Occasionally it's, like all the other beat reporters, is over sensationalized and whatever. And guess he's out there. He's been on the beat for a while. He tweets, trying to say some nice stuff before I'm going on here, but it's just like every preseason he's just complaining about this game is taking forever. This is the longest preseason ever. I've even heard some stuff about, he's always complaining when he's in the in the press conference room waiting for Saleh to walk in. It's just like, oh, this is taking forever. It's just like, dude, if you hate your job, just quit. There's so many people that want that position. I don't know. Maybe it's just his bit. Is that just his shtick, you think? Just like be the cranky old guy? But it's like, you're not reporting anything. When was the last time Brian Costello broke a single story?
I'm pretty sure he did break the Aaron Rodgers is playing against the Giants.
God damn it.
So totally invalidates. Before that, I don't know.
Brian, I've always loved Brian Costello. I always thought he was a great.
We're cutting this.
I think we should keep it in. Brian Costello's just been a great addition to the Jets beat. He's just been on top of things for forever. I don't know. You think that's lame? I think it's, I'll stand by. I would say it to him. It's like, dude, don't tweet that. No Jets fans want to read your tweets about how you hate being there.
I agree.
All right. Sorry, Brian. Okay. Guess we'll wrap it up there. That was a fun podcast. We'll be back. What are we thinking? TBD?
TBD.
All right, TBD. We'll be back TBD. Probably after the Giants game. Maybe if something happens this week, maybe before then.
At some point in the future. Although to quote Kyle Shanahan, not word for word, but I don't even know if I'm going to be alive tomorrow.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great week. Go Jets.